Welcome to BlizzCon 2017 coverage, brought to you by BlizzPro.com.
Hey guys, welcome back. We are here to talk some Heroes of the Storm. I'm here with Tony Sue. He is a senior producer for Heroes of the Storm. Then we have John DeShazer. He is a lead Battleground designer. So I guess, guys, to start with, talk a little bit about what your roles are on the team and kind of what you are responsible for, what projects you work on.
So in being a senior game producer on Heroes of the Storm, my primary charge is working with our design groups, and I get to work with our art groups and bringing the best content to you possible. So I'm working with the hero teams and creating new heroes for the Nexus, working on reworking heroes and also bringing new battlegrounds to you as well. So ultimately, I'm more concerned with working on the timelines and making sure that we are bringing everything to you as soon as possible and with the best quality as possible as well.
So yeah, as lead Battleground designer, my major focus is to focus on building Battlegrounds. We also focus on all the Brawl content that everyone gets to see. And sometimes my team gets to focus on stuff like the 2018 gameplay updates that are coming out. So we're really excited about to talk about those today as well.
Nice. Now, one thing that gets everybody excited is new hero releases. So here at this event, we've got Alexstrasza, we've got Genji, we've got the Dragon theme. I know this isn't necessarily your specialty, but can you talk about the hero design and what's going on with those heroes?
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely talk about some of the heroes. So one of my favorite things is Hanzo, the hero that's here today. I believe you said Genji, but
sorry,
no worries. Hanzo, he's a really fun hero, and the thing I find so unique about him is the way his gameplay actually interacts with the experience, because his Q, Stormbow, has this skill shot that builds up over time. Is really good at poking. But then he also has a really slow auto attack. And he's the thing that I really enjoy about him is when you become really good with him is when you weave in the auto attack and the Q, because since the Q's on a low cooldown, you can really do Q, auto attack, and it really kind of is one of those ways to like level up your mastery with that character over time.
Yeah, and his Q is also interesting because you can move while that channels. So you have kind of a special stutter stepping mechanic between your auto attacks and that skill shot.
Absolutely, and he's obviously one of those characters that placement's really important because he also gets to play with the terrain. Because he uses his scatter shot arrow to bounce off the terrain and then fracture his single arrow into 5 arrows that so basically does 5 times the amount of damage.
Right.
And so it's a really cool feature where he gets to amplify his damage as he learns and manipulates the terrain of the battlefield. So as you get more and more time with him, you get to learn those special angles that you get to, as you play on the map more and more, you go, oh, I can bounce off of that shot to always hit that support that's usually standing in this area. And that kind of gameplay, it's just really, really enjoyable for me.
Right.
Especially as the Battleground designer.
Exactly, sure. Extra interaction for you. Now, there's so much that goes on at BlizzCon. Maybe I missed this, but do we know which one of them is coming first?
Well, I will let Tony talk about that. I'll also talk about Alexstrasza.
Thanks. So Alexstrasza is our hero that is coming very soon after BlizzCon, and Hanzo is the hero that we'll be bringing to the Nexus by the end of the year.
Okay.
But Alexstrasza we are especially excited about because she is the first character who actually turns into a dragon while you're on the battleground. Yeah. So in being the life binder from Warcraft, life and the ability to control life is a huge ability for her, and being a support, she actually heals her allies by giving her own life to them, and in doing so, you amplify it. And so the more life that she has, the more she's able to heal as well. And so her trait in being Dragon Queen also allows her to go into, you would call it like an ultimate healer mode, where she now has the ability to heal allies without giving up life. Her heals are even bigger, and she has the ability to breathe fire. And so as you're breathing fire on the enemies, it's damaging them as well as healing your allies as well. So it's really awesome to see the huge form of Alexstrasza from the Red Dragon flight on the battlefield, helping your allies and rolling enemies.
And playing as a dragon is something that so many players have wanted. We have Chromie, she's a dragon aspect, that's cool, but again, people want to be that dragon. So can you talk about some of the challenges that you guys had to overcome to have such a large model on the field and incorporating that?
Yeah, so it's interesting you mentioned Chromie, because when we first started Chromie, we really wanted that dragon on the battlefield, but we're like, there's no way we're able to do it. And so in having the time and learning from there and working on Alexstrasza, we were able to take the learnings from Chromie. And when we're actually making Alexstrasza's model, those are some of the things that we looked at of how do we create a large character on the battlefield, but still make it readable, because readability, ultimately, you want to know, where your character is, are you hiding other characters? And so, in making her, we deliberately made her wingspan much smaller and much tighter to her body.
Okay.
So as you're looking at her on the battlefield, the silhouette is tighter, so the wings don't obscure other characters. Along with that, we were able to work on a turning technology for her, which we debuted with Kel'Thuzad. So as Alexstrasza moves around the battlefield, you'll notice that her neck is a little tighter, and we'll telegraph the way she's turning along with the tail. So overall, with that new technology, we're able to keep her silhouette much more compact. As she's moving around the battlefield, she's not splayed out all over the place, but rather she remains in a tighter area. So it makes a lot more sense to have that big character, but you're still within a compact area.
Right. And John, you said you had something you wanted to say about Alexstrasza?
Well, Alexstrasza, I mean, one of the great things I love about her gameplay is that, like Tony had said, you give away your life with the gift of life ability, but then with abundance, she can heal herself. So you're constantly in this cycle of give away your health, heal yourself, give away your life, and heal yourself, and that's really an interesting gameplay moment. And with abundance having such strong counterplay of this giant circle on the ground, enemy knows where you want to stand, right? They can predict you with skill shots. They can throw AoEs on top of it. It becomes this non-guaranteed heal, which is a really fun kind of like synergy. Like, I really want to get that heal so I can keep throwing out Gift of Lives very actively and be a very aggressive healer. But I also need to make sure that abundance is in like a somewhat safe location so the enemy can't poke us too badly. And so the positioning there and the basically the concert between those two abilities is really fun.
Now, one of the big topics as far as the meta goes is the whole double support versus single support. Where do you see her playing into that? Is she going to be a pure solo healer? Is she going to be better when she's in concert with someone else?
She definitely has the capabilities of being a solo healer. So she brings a lot of power to the game. And honestly, I would argue that she might be one of those characters that will help, kind of shake up the meta a little bit in the fact that you don't need to have a double support. Because when that big, important team fight happens, you get to transform into that massive dragon and bring a lot of healing to that moment of the gameplay. Because then Gift of Life is free. It doesn't actually hurt her. The circle for abundance is much larger during that dragon form mode. So, like, she is scary when the dragon's down. And that team fight moment is, like, really scary. So, like, honestly, that's one of the reasons why you bring that double support is to make sure that other support doesn't go down. But you also get a boost of life while you're in dragon form. So, like, a lot of the reasons why you bring double support can still support her, but I also think it's a strong reason why you don't need to have a double support with an Alexstrasza.
Yeah. So other than the new hero announcements, probably the next biggest topic for a lot of people is the performance-based matchmaking. So in case anyone missed the panel yesterday, can you kind of give us the details on that and talk about that new system?
Yeah, so for performance-based matchmaking, one of the things that we want to do is we want to make sure that you're just focused on playing the game as best as you can. Obviously, winning and losing comes along with it, and it always feels good to win. But sometimes you do end up losing, and we want to take away a little bit of that sting if you do end up losing, if you're playing a great game. Because there's some of those games that you could be doing absolutely awesome, and it just doesn't work out for your team. And so what we're doing is we're taking a look at kind of the performance of how an average player might be playing certain heroes, and then taking a look at higher skilled players and seeing, are there certain types of behaviors, are there certain types of patterns that those type of players exhibit? So for instance, crowd control, damage, how you're focusing on playing that hero. And as a result, through performance-based matchmaking, if you end up losing a match, but personally you had a really good match, the amount of points that you'll lose is actually far reduced.
Right.
And so, for instance, also if you end up winning a game and you do really well because you're someone who's helping to carry the team, we want to make sure and reflect that, and you'll get even more points as well.
Right. I think when a lot of people hear about this system, their first thought is that it's going to be kind of like the commendation and MVP system, but it sounds like there's so much more depth to it than that. There's so many more aspects.
Yeah, definitely. So as an example of a character like Illidan. Illidan's an assassin, and he's largely focused on just dealing damage. He's sustained. How can you get to the back line? How can you keep dealing that damage without falling? And so that's something that we look at for Illidan and saying if you can continue to deal that type of sustained damage, those are the type of things that are exhibited in higher level players. But Kerrigan, on the other side, while she's an assassin as well, she is a little bit more focused on crowd control. Like if we look at Kerrigan's at higher ratings, the ability to crowd control your enemy, pull them into battle so your team can fight against them, those are the type of behaviors that end up being more successful amongst high-level Kerrigans. And so if those are the type of behaviors that you can learn, then through doing those type of things, it'll tend to help your team. It'll help you win more games. It'll help you be even better at the game as well.
Right. And you talk about how the system is, again, tuned into the specific hero you're playing and what that hero, based on the data you have, is ideally doing to contribute the most to the game. So obviously there's a fine line because you don't want to give away too many details and make the system gameable, but I think there's also a learning opportunity there for players. Like, so is there a chance to share what those targeted things are for each hero, that maybe you're like, and maybe it builds into the roles, but that if you play these heroes, these are maybe the things that you should be focusing on.
Right. And so that's the great thing about the system too, is since Heroes of the Storm is such a flexible team game, there is no specific one right way to play hero. And a lot of it depends on what your team comp is, what the enemy is playing against. And so over time, I think those stats of what you're looking at and what is, I guess, high-level play will change over time, and so I think those type of metrics will change as well. So, we definitely don't want to pigeonhole you in saying this is how you have to play Kerrigan. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that you have the flexibility, the style to play how you want to play. Right. But over time, once again, if you're doing those things that are helping your team win and helping you do even better, those are the type of things we want to be rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you guys have been running this kind of in addition to the old matchmaking system just to get the data. How are you going to incorporate this when you roll it out? Like, how is it going to tie in to old games people have played?
So in regards to matchmaking, that is an ongoing evolution. It's something that we continually work on. We've actually made a lot of revisions, and we have engineers back at home that are still working on matchmaking as we're gathering that data. So this is something that the performance-based matchmaking will actually be integrated into the matchmaking system, and that determines how you find the matches, how long you wait, the fairness of games and whatnot. So overall, we want to make it a seamless experience and just make it even better for our players.
Mm-hmm. But we're going to retain those old games when it comes to our base MMR. There's no, because a lot of people, some people want some kind of MMR reset or a partial reset or a rolling amount of games. Is there any news on that front as far as what factors go into your MMR, your ranking, that different thing as far as old games?
Gotcha. Yeah, unfortunately, that's something I'm not well versed in. That's something, it's pretty technical, and we have a lot of engineers that are specifically working on that, so that's something that's a little bit out of my area of expertise.
Mm-hmm. And then you guys had a slide talking about the internal results as far as how quickly players can move up and down if their skill isn't necessarily reflected by what their current MMR is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's something that we want to do as well, is that with the new system, depending on where you're currently at, one of the pieces of feedback that we've heard is that it takes a long time sometimes to move up, to get to where you believe your skill set is. And so as part of these changes as well, with performance-based matchmaking, if you are a high-level performer and you happen to start or you got assigned to a lower-level ranking, you will move through those ranks far faster, and we want to get you to where your appropriate ranking is faster, so that way you're playing those significant games against people who are on your equivalent skill level.
Right. So there's so much big news. One of the next big topics is the changing to how laning works and everything that goes along with that. So can you share some details on that? And
absolutely. So our big focus here was to definitely make the early laning combat feel much more meaningful and much more impactful for the players. And we wanted to shake some things up in regard to like making it so that we pushed back the map events a little bit. So map events start typically around, so there's two average times now. One, the early ones are going to be, the warning will start at 1 minute, and then the event will start in a minute 30. The second one is this is the standard across the board, is that the warning will start at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and the event will start at 3 minutes. And so that's definitely pushing it back on average about 60 seconds across the board of most of our maps. And so that means that that early phase is a little longer. And so we definitely wanted to add some level of complexity there and some fun. And so one of the things is we now have regen globes are now going to be something that swaps from your side to neutral, that anyone can be gathered. And that is definitely this moment of, oh, now I have regen globe combat is actually a much more intimate detail between you and the person that you're fighting against. And so I'm definitely going to be like aware of that, their positioning to the regen globe and mine. And we also, so because if I can collect all the regen globes, I'm going to be in a much healthier state. I'm going to be able to push the lane a lot stronger. I'm going to throw out more abilities, have more health, right? So that gameplay is very interesting. We can't wait to release that to the public and see how players interact with it. The other things that we've really hit are definitely a mercenary update, where the night camp now has an aura where they get actually a spell armor aura, and this is to incentivize players to push with the night camp, not just to fire and forget it. And so, because when you have spell armor aura, that's basically when players interact with each other, right? Because that's ability damage, and that's only really applied by heroes. And so we definitely wanted to incentivize, hey, if I push with this, the enemy team's going to have a harder time to apply damage to my team while we stay around this night camp, and therefore we can, do a lot more damage typically. that also is like with the Hellbat camp where we updated them as well. They now do an AoE attack. Well, they've always done an AoE attack, but when they do it, they also debuff enemies' armor when they hit. And that will actually stack up to 5 times, up to negative 25 armor. Well, that basically always does more damage if you have heroes supporting that because they're debuffing something. So anything that does damage will be amplified by the negative armor. And so the goal there is to basically take some camps, add a new identity to them, and incentivize players to play with them, not necessarily fire and forget them. But then there's also still, we want to respect the way players have learned how to play our game. And so we actually haven't really changed the Siege Giant camp's role in the game. If you capture that camp right before the event starts, it'll definitely push its lane, do really strong things. And we think that's actually a healthy role. We just want to make sure that camps have their different roles. And so what we did with them is we just kind of cleaned them up. We made it so that you can see their AoE attacks in lane a lot easier. We actually made it so that you can also have their AoE attacks in the jungle versus the lane also behave the same. And so that when you're fighting them in the jungle, you also can dodge their attacks. And so therefore, if you're really good at an agile player, you can actually capture that camp much easier. And also, like if you're like, oh, I'm too squishy to capture that camp, well, that's not true anymore. Just dodge, right? And so that's definitely something that we wanted to incentivize. And so those are a couple of the major focuses. Was there any specific details that you wanted to ask?
No, I thought, well, a few, but obviously that's a great start. Are you able to share which maps are going to fall into the faster category and which ones are going to be in the later
so
ones?
The goal there is to basically make it so any map mechanic that plays well with early lane combat, we just bring on early. And so Dragonshire makes sense. Tomb of the Spider Queen makes sense. Even though that one actually didn't change at all because the map mechanic is intrinsic with the spawning of the lanes, right? Because the gems just spawn. Brax's Holdout makes sense because the map mechanic is right next to the lane as well. So all the map mechanics that tie into early combat already and intimately are the ones that make sense. The ones that pull you out of lane, Sky Temple, Cursed Hollow, those are the ones that we're pushing to the later time.
Yeah. Now, have you seen any impact on these changes as far as how it affects game length?
Actually, so that was definitely one of our focuses, is that we wanted to make sure that game length didn't grow because of this. But if you actually see it, some of the higher level gameplay, the game length is significantly shorter. And so we don't mind if at their stage of the gameplay, like if they go from a 12-minute game to a 14-minute game, that's fine. And so really we just wanted to make sure that no games, we still wanted to hit that games don't go typically past 20 minutes, and so that was our major focus there. And so we're definitely taking a look at some of the balance of some of the new map mechanics, right? Or not the new map, the older map mechanics in respect to things like them starting later, or now that there's no ammo, there's unlimited ammo, I guess. So those will actually do more damage to map mechanics. So now we need to look at maybe they need to be a little buffer or a little stronger in general so that they do the similar impact. Just like pushing it back the map mechanic, we didn't actually see a significant drop or a significant growth in game time because those early map mechanics were almost like a positioning combat experience. Maybe you would get the front gate, half of a fort damage, but typically you didn't get much beyond that. So pushing it back actually means that the first event's just a little more meaningful. And so, therefore, it kind of counterbalances the fact that it starts a little later.
Now, Alan talked a bit yesterday about changing the release timeline to give things more air to breathe and not have so many big things happening at once. Do you have an idea how that's going to affect hero releases? I'm assuming, like, will we see them start to be staggered out a little bit more? And do you have an idea of the timeline?
So overall, this is something Alan chatted a little bit about Gamescom as well, but as far as our release goes, we want to make sure that we're continuing to have those meaningful releases for players. And so whether it's Heroes, whether it's Battlegrounds, whether it's balanced reworks, one of the things that we've done in the past is we've kind of grouped it all together. And so in one release, you might have, a new hero, you might have a new Battleground, a new Brawl, and, maybe up to 3 hero rebalances. And in doing so, that's a lot of content to be taking at the same time. And so what we want to be doing is we want to be spreading that out a little bit. So I would imagine, we want to keep in the similar cadence. We've been going at about the 4 to 5 week cadence for releasing a new hero. But what we want to do is in between those areas, we want to make sure that we have meaningful content as well for our players. So you may see something like a hero release and then a week or two later have some hero rebalances, and then maybe a week or two beyond that, a Battleground, and then another hero that comes along very shortly. So overall, we want to make sure that there's this constant stream of content for players to continue enjoying the game.
Okay. So the recent trend has been that when we get a new hero approximately once a month, we also get a new Battleground rotation. Will there be any changes to the Battleground rotation frequency since the hero releases may be staggered a bit?
We actually are in the middle of having a conversation about how the Battleground rotation is going right now. We're definitely going to take a review pass on it. We usually take a look at that in between seasons because we don't want to drastically change things in the middle of a season because we don't want to shake things up so the players don't have that understanding of the cadence of the gameplay. And so since the season's ending relatively soon, that's when we're going to probably take a look at it. And before we turn on the new season, that's when we'll make a decision.
Okay. Now, one last question. I promised I would ask this. We have someone on the team who is a diehard Chen fan. He loves Chen more than anybody loves any hero, or at least he thinks so. So he asked me, and again, these are his words, so don't put this on me, when you guys are going to do a proper Chen rework.
I actually think Chen's a really fun hero to play, and I agree with him that he's a really enjoyable experience in the game. I don't know what that question necessarily is asking of us. I think we are constantly looking at the health of the game and the health of heroes, and so whenever our live rework team, which is neither of us, determines that he's in a state where that needs to happen, that's when we would do it. And I don't believe we currently have that on the schedule, but
I'm not sure.
Okay, so we don't know. I'm sorry.
And I guess just to wrap it up, is there anything that you guys want to talk about? Anything you guys want to share?
Well, like I said, so my major focus lately has been the 2018 Battleground updates, and one of the things I want to share about that is we're actually going to have a really long PTR coming up soon. When we put it on the PTR, we're going to have, I think, 3 weeks for players to hop on and try out those changes. We are absolutely looking for feedback.
Right.
This isn't like the standard PTR where it's 1 week left, and normally we want feedback there too, but we also are looking for bugs, and there's a lot of stuff in that 1 week. This 3 weeks is extended because we're specifically looking for player feedback. So hop on the forums, hop onto Reddit, find any way to engage with our community team and get that feedback to us, because we're definitely looking for it.
Beautiful.
And I would just say, I mean, thank you for playing Heroes of the Storm. The game is continuing to grow, and we are super excited to be bringing Alexstrasza and Hanzo to the Nexus. So it's a wonderful time to be bringing in your friends and to be playing even more games to enjoy the Lifebinder and bringing a dragon into the Nexus, and also bringing the awesome archer from the Shimada clan, and getting to see more Overwatch characters as well. Great.
Well, thank you guys for all of your hard work that you do. Again, speaking for all the players, we love the game and we appreciate what you do. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Great. Thank you as well.
Right. Take care, everybody. We will see you next time.
For more BlizzCon 2017 coverage, check us out at BlizzPro.com. Subscribe to us here on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at BlizzPro.